What do you think about what RFK's been doing?
He's been getting a lot of attention on podcasts from a lot of middle-aged white guys who are fascinated with him. He's getting pumped up by Republicans who see him as a troublemaker. And he's getting in more and more trouble. The higher, what do they say? The higher the monkey climbs, the more you can see his ass. Every time he turns around, he's getting it in deeper and deeper. And whatever mission that he had is ending in failure.
So would you say Silicon Valley is Republican or Democrat? Most of Silicon Valley money?
Well, I don't know what his money situation is, and it almost doesn't matter. I mean, look, I did a podcast about him and Christie, two people who were apparently running to help the other party that they claim to be trying to run and help.
Yeah.
So, but it's irrelevant. Every campaign season we have the same thing, and it's particularly acute now that we are kind of bored with who we have, and so the media loves to pump oxygen into people who probably don't deserve it. And Kennedy, it's just, I mean, look, it's Kennedy, the name, Kennedy, the...
You don't like him? You don't like...
I don't know him. I never met him personally. I mean, I think he's selling books. Pretty clear to me. That's all he's doing.
You think he's selling books? Okay.
I mean, if you use something like the higher a monkey climbs, the more you see his ass, I'm getting the vibe you're not a fan. Is that accurate?
I wouldn't, look, the guy, he's a conspiracy charlatan. I do a show where I try to take people steps back, and I find that Venn diagram where people who are interested in both sides of the aisle, but they want to have a conversation based on substance and based on facts. He's not doing that. He's a conspiracy theorist. I don't hold them in high regard.
I think he's been very substantive with a lot of the things he's saying about guns, drugs. A lot of the crypto community is an advocate of him.
Which is ironic for a guy who claims to be an eco-warrior environmentalist. He's changed his tune on that. Look, he's doing one common thread you can find. Whatever's making him money, whatever's getting him attention is what he's doing. So he was an environmentalist. Now cryptocurrency is where he's deriving some of his money. So suddenly he's not so concerned about the environment. It's clear to me that this attention grab around anti-vaxxing is a money grab. You can go there. They're featuring now on Amazon, especially for the election, a new box set of all of his books or whatever it is. It's a money grab. When I look at why candidates are running, there's usually a couple of things. One, they're running because they really think they're going to win. Another group of people are running because they're running for something else. Like, I think the candidates in South Carolina are probably running for vice president. Then there are candidates who are running for the next time. It seems like DeSantis is probably doing that. And then there are people who just want to get their name out there for some vague money-making or prestige or career sense, and that's what I believe RFK is.
So let me read this article to you. So Silicon Valley money men are buzzing about RFK. This is a Wall Street Journal story. Prominent figures in Silicon Valley such as Jack Dorsey, Shamat, David Sachs are expressing support for RFK's presidential campaign, drawn to his willingness to challenge the status quo. Dorsey recently voiced his backing, stating the more people hear from RFK, the more they agree with our view that he should be part of the debate going forward. Kennedy's engagement with the tech community, including appearances on podcasts and discussions on platforms like Twitter Spaces, has resonated with some tech leaders who values anti-establishment stance. Shamat expressed, I've always been anti-establishment. The idea of tearing down all these institutions of power gives me glee. So to get the attentions of guys in Silicon Valley that don't necessarily consider themselves...
Why do I care about those guys?
Maybe you should.
I didn't say I should. I didn't ask if I should. I said, why should I care? That's the question.
Why should they care about what you say, though?
Fair enough. I'm not asking. I'm not saying that they should.
But this is a podcast, so we're bringing up the story to say when you said.
I know, but I'm saying
no, because no, hang on. I said you said RFK is getting a lot of Republican money. He's not. He's getting Democratic.
I didn't say that.
Yeah, you said he's getting a lot of Republican money that are interested in him.
People who are propping him up as a troublemaker. Yeah.
And you said Republicans specifically, but many of these
he's getting
guys
his
are
Republican
Democrats.
support. That's where his growth of support. He said 4% among Democrats. That's why your theory last week about he's going to be a third party, like you can just invent a party out of whole cloth, and that he's going to be a troublemaker for Democrats. He's the best thing could possibly happen in a third party.
So you do follow the podcast.
I told you when
okay, so that's good.
I said I listened to the Rubin interview on the plane last night.
Okay, so who do you like, Anthony? Who do you like? Which of these guys do you like?
I got to tell you,
are you like a diehard Biden guy?
I think we have something that I call, and this is a trademark, so don't steal it. I call it the backup quarterback syndrome in politics. That we always think the guy who's on the sideline is going to be the better candidate, the better player. And so this time of the cycle, it's who else is out there. It doesn't matter who else is out there. It's going to be Biden and Trump. So, and that choice is crystal clear for me. So who do I want? Who do I think would be better? I don't know. The guy who's in the job is doing a pretty good job at the job. He's wildly unpopular. But then again, so is everybody. Everyone's unpopular now. So, I mean, I'm going to vote for Joe Biden. You're going to vote for Donald Trump, and we're off to the races. But I don't think it matters. I mean, I listen to these guys. None of them seem particularly interesting to me because they're not terribly interested in doing anything to depart from the orthodoxy of their candidate. I mean, I don't know if that's on the screen, but Cornel West is who I'm doing my show about this Saturday. I mean, that's a problem. A Green Party candidate cost Hillary Clinton the election in 2016, and Cornel West could conceivably do that again. But as far as
Jill Stein.
I'm a Green Party candidate.
That's what I'm saying.
Oh, yes, Jill Stein. But he's a much better known figure than Jill Stein, and he's a better attention getter, and I think he's a better speaker. So he's
the potential to be the Perot effect, a viable candidate that gets just enough for that, because elections come down to the 9 points in the middle. So you have a third
I would
party.
agree with that, but Perot's an open question. I think historically you can look. It's a weird dynamic. Traditionally speaking, a third party would harm the incumbent, right? That's the common sense view of it. But in that case, it was a very weird dynamic what was going on, because Clinton was doing a change election, and Perot was the changiest frickin' thing out. Am I allowed to curse on the show?
Go for it, Anthony.
The changiest frickin' thing out there was Ross Perot. So I know there's been a lot of talk that Perot cost Bush the election. I know Bush thought that. But I'm not sure the math holds up on that. But in terms of Cornel West, it's clear every single one of a lefty, green, candidate, African American, who talks about, the Democratic Party not doing enough for African Americans. That's 2 points in Wisconsin right there, right? Well, 2 points, probably high, but 1.5 points in Wisconsin, where the margin last time was only 1.5 points. So,
Aaron, question for you. In regards to campaigning, mayor, which is a city, then you have the state versus you got nation, like DeSantis, Congress, governor.
Yeah.
How different is it campaigning, city, Congress, district versus governor versus president?
Well, mayor of New York City is a whole different creature, right? I mean, you're campaigning for mayor of the city of New York. You're attracting national attention because, first, it's an off-year election. It's not held at the same time, so it's a really barren time on the political calendar. But in essence, it's the same thing. It is thrust and parry around issues, what people care about, identifying what it is you're trying to say in a very short, concise thing. The stuff I found, and again, you've taken a run at me for not watching the show when you're out, but the stuff you do around marketing is interesting to me. One of the reasons I wanted to come here is kind of see the marketing side of this. So there is a marketing and a notion of like figuring out what works and what doesn't. But in a broad sense, presidential candidates are very different things than anything else in politics because you're running this weird bifurcated campaign of a national campaign and this weird state-by-state thing where you can be campaigning in Iowa talking about completely different issues than you're talking about when you go to New Hampshire or South Carolina. That doesn't happen. I mean, to some degree, you go upstate in New York or Tallahassee compared to Miami. You get a little bit of that when you run as a governor, but you really get it as that. That's why I think states like New York, Florida, California, a governor who says, look, I know from dealing with different communities, I know with different geographies, different economic imperatives, that makes me ready to be president, which is why Americans choose governors so often to be president.
You said earlier, we were talking about RFK. You're like, well, it's just a money grab. He's trying to get money. He's trying to sell books. He's trying to do this. Did you read his Fauci book or no?
Oh God, no.
You haven't read it?
Did I read the Fauci book? No, I didn't. I don't read.
Why not?
I don't. It's much easier just to read other people who debunk crazy conspiracy theories. I don't have to read the conspiracy theory.
So what was conspiracy theory about?
I'm not gonna. If your listeners want to go and do their own research on it, I'm not gonna sit here and be Fauci versus Kennedy on a conspiracy. I mean, I just don't have any interest in that.
In doing what? In doing the conspiracy?
In being one side of a conspiracy theorist, like debunking a conspiracy theorist. You can get other people on for that. And you get all kinds of people who are real experts in this stuff to do that. I'm not interested.
So what's your show about?
So the thesis is it's a very conservative radio station. You guys have a pretty conservative audience here, I surmise?
Probably center-right, I would assume. A very, very capitalist, entrepreneurial, free thinkers.
Pretty conservative. I love this. My boss, the owner of my station, says, we're center-right. I'm like, boss, I'm the only thing that's not hard-right on the entire station, so we're not center-right. We're pretty right. But I believe in the idea. I represent a fairly conservative district by the standards of New York. Archie Bunker's house was in my district.
That's in what city, by the way?
New York City.
In New York City, that was your district. What area?
Oh, the outer boroughs of Queens and Brooklyn, working class areas, not the fancy high rises, the places where, like, as I mentioned, Archie Bunker from, I gotta remember.
Good time. All in the Family.
All in the Family.
Yeah.
Very conservative. Places I lost 80-20, for example. You know, when I left Congress, when I told Nancy Pelosi, you want me out, I want to warn you, this is going to be a Republican seat when I leave. It was. So, and I prosecuted that job with the argument being that we all have our partisanship, even more so now than when I was in office. But I think there's a healthy group of people in the Venn diagram of Democrat and Republican who don't want one hand clapping, who want to hear what the other side has to say, who want to engage in some kind of a conversation about it. It doesn't seem that way in American media today. I will admit that most of the money is on one side or the other, one silo or the other. I am trying out the theory that if I try to be a Democrat, a well-known, famous, you know, fired up, green, whatever.
Establishment type of a Democrat, like.
Well, you say establishment. I did run against the establishment every time I ran.
You are pretty establishment, buddy. Nobody gets. I mean, you're as establishment as it gets.
Well, I don't know. When I was in Congress, I was causing all kinds of headaches for my party because I was advocating for left on healthcare. I was advocating right on Israel and law enforcement. You can put establishment. All I know is from establishment is most establishments in my district in New York City and in Washington didn't like me and were happy when I was out. So that's all I can say about the establishment. But let me just finish my thought about what...
Real quick with the establishment, I mean, you're very closely linked with the Clintons, whether you're Bush, Clinton, that's as establishment as it gets. Is that not fair?
I guess I was married to her the deputy chief staff at the State Department. But remember something, you know, Bill Clinton was not an establishment guy when he started. Right? He came, frankly, ran against the establishment when a lot of people thought it wasn't a smart time to run in '92, et cetera. But all of that being said...
But then he became the establishment.
Well, when you become the president, you become the establishment. Donald Trump is like the outside guy. He's the president. The guy he's now the very definition.
Far from establishment. He was not establishment.
But once you're
Kennedy
saying,
wasn't establishment.
I know, but I'm just responding to the idea that people run when they're not the establishment. But once you become the institution of the presidency, you become the establishment.
Define establishment. What is establishment to you?
Well, maybe we should both do it since it was in your question. But I guess establishment is the organizations and institutions of politics and whether they like you or don't like you, okay? Whether you pose a threat to them or not a threat to them. I can only assume, given their eagerness to get rid of me, and I can attest to this, that I don't consider myself a, but I also don't consider it such a pejorative. If by establishment you mean someone who, like you used it, that got elected president, that got elected Congress a whole bunch of times when there's a middle-class kid who, like, with the name Anthony Weiner. Okay, yes, I was a member of the United States House of Representatives, a job that is in the Constitution of the United States. That is, by definition, the establishment.
You know what has happened last few years that's a little weird that you say I don't want to talk about it. Rob, can you pull up the article that just came out? Paragraph 19, New York Times, on the amount of COVID deaths that they reported. And this word that the CIA came up with called conspiracy theory that a lot of people like to throw around. Hey, this is a conspiracy and that. Well, the history of it goes back, but CIA was one of the ones that really took it to a whole different level. If you read this article here, go to the part where it's, okay, the far left New York Times.
Who are you reading from?
This is
New York Times.
No, it's the Breitbart.
Well, we can go to the New York Times article if you want to. So the far left New York Times quietly admits this week that deaths from coronavirus were overcounted by 30%. Another right-wing conspiracy theory is proven true. And by the way, can you go to the paragraph where it's actually written the way it is? It's on a different article, I think, that Valuetainment launched. Go to exaggeration.
The headline was a positive COVID milestone.
Search the word exaggeration if you can. There you go. The official number, okay, so COVID totals, to be clear, has not fallen to zero. That is 80%. The official number is probably an exaggeration because it includes some people who had virus when they died, even though it was not the underlying cause of death.
Like my father.
Other CDC data suggests, sorry for your loss, suggests that almost 1/3 of official recent COVID deaths have fallen into this category. That is a big number. So when we're sitting around every day, we're watching the news and everybody is panicking, people's lives are being stopped, kids are not going to school.
People are dying, a million people are dying.
Yeah, a million people are dying, but you're saying to do what? Stop everything? You're saying to force everybody to take the vaccine?
I'm just saying you were taking that as a way to minimize and I am taking the other position that I don't think you minimize a million people.
I don't think anybody minimized it. I think
that language sounds pretty minimizing, Patrick.
Do you see the part about 1/3? Is that a conspiracy theory?
No,
what do you say to this?
I think this is a pretty reliable. So the 1/3 is a hyperlink. We can probably go look and see what that is. That sounds like it makes a lot of sense to me.
Oh, now it does. So this is why America's...
What difference? What point are you making here, my brother?
Oh, you were about to say what difference does it make? A legendary quote used by somebody else in the
past.
No,
what difference does it make to your point? You're saying this is not this is a conspiracy theory?
But no, you're saying, when I said, have you read the book? I said, why would you read the book? That's all conspiracy theory.
No, he didn't say this. He had conspiracy theories
about If you haven't read it, how would you know what he said about it?
Because I explained this earlier to your question. I read the reviews of the book and the debunkings
of the book. Oh, so you read the reviews. Got it. So kind of like if I'm in office and I have to go through a certain new legislation is coming up, I just wait to see what New York Times writes about instead of me writing about it.
A lot of people tune into your program to find out about other things in the news and get a perspective on it to draw conclusions because they trust you. Isn't that true?
Right.
So I have sources that I trust. This is not such a novel idea.
But I would read the other side's book.
You would read every book on both sides of every what? Really?
If it's one of the biggest crises we experience over a 3-year period, yes. If I have to
anyone
read
within the sound of my voice can read what bullshit that guy is spewing. But I'm not going to have you want to have an argument about COVID. By the way, you're making the DeSantis mistake now.
Any guy, say that again.
What's the DeSantis mistake?
The DeSantis mistake is it's the Churchill effect, of believing that what was a giant issue 2 years ago that animates people is still a giant issue that animates them today.
That's the problem with the establishment.
Why, you think DeSantis is still making that an issue?
No, I think DeSantis is running a campaign based on things that are no longer salient.
Well, that's
for
the
his
reason
base.
that he's relevant. That's kind of like the whole reason that he's on the forefront of the campaign.
Excuse me, how do you define forefront? He's getting crushed.
He's in second place right now.
He's trailing by 40 points.
Yeah, you're right, but the reason that DeSantis is known
first of all, I'm changing the subject, but I'm also explaining the phenomenon that he experienced at Rudy Giuliani, the Winston Churchill phase, that you can be amazingly good in your mind and for your voters' mind in a certain issue, but once that issue recedes, the salience of that and the importance of that issue recedes as well. That's the mistake that DeSantis is making.
And by the way, with all due respect, this is why people don't like you and trust you. This is why America doesn't trust the establishment. And the one thing I want
Am I going to be the harbinger of the establishment in this conversation?
No, you're part of it because the American people, okay, the American people who followed the guidelines, not the people that didn't follow the guidelines, the people that took the COVID vaccine, the people that followed the non-essential, the people that didn't go to work, the people that kept their kids from going to school, and they said, the experts are telling me this.
Yeah.
You dramatically changed my life, and now you're saying what difference does it make?
No, I didn't say that. No.
That's
I said what difference
pattern
that is
of who cares that's behind us. So DeSantis, don't talk about it.
We have some time here, so let's go back for a moment. You were pointing to a reference in there and talking about a conspiracy theory and whether it was reduced less than a third.
No, you called it a conspiracy theory. I did not. You're claiming it's a conspiracy theory of a book
you've not read yet. You were debunking it by going to a clip and you pointing to the 1/3.
New York Times,
and I said, what difference does it make to the argument you were making? I didn't understand the argument you were making.
No, because you said it's been 2 or 3 years. People don't care anymore. That's what you're trying to say.
I was making, you're giving me whiplash. No, I was making an argument of why DeSantis is struggling in the polls in an effort to change the subject, quite frankly. Struggling in the polls.
Slick move.
Thank you. Struggling in the polls is because he is pursuing this line
of
rhetoric.
I think that's the furthest reason why he's not doing well in the polls.
Okay, successfully changed the subject. All right, why do you think?
Why he's not succeeding in the polls?
Yeah, I mean, I heard your theory last week.
Let me put it to you this way. When Rob said Anthony Weiner, you know, for example, on the show here, Saturday we'll have Chris Cuomo here, okay, on a podcast. He's flying in just to do the podcast and he flies back.
Me too.
We've had, tonight will be Dave Smith, tomorrow's Ice Cube. We've interviewed people from left, right, center, everybody.
What are some examples of left?
Kyle Kulinski, Sam Cedar,
David Pacman, Andrew Yang.
Cenk is coming back. Andrew Yang, David I can give you a bunch of names.
Who's David Pacman?
You should look him up. You should start doing a little research. I don't think you read enough.
I should.
But the part I would say to you is the following.
Yes.
The reason, this is exactly the reason why people have a hard time believing what guys like you are saying.
So if you like this clip and you want to watch another one, click right here. And if you want to watch the entire podcast, click right here.